Okay, if you all can find your seats, we will begin here shortly. I'm going to bring our Executive Director, Lauren K. Elaine, to the stage to welcome you all and to welcome our online audience. Let's give it up for Lauren.
Hello, everyone. How are we doing? Okay, I'm really going to need the energy to go up like, 2 notches. How are we doing? Yes, give it to me. I love it. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so grateful that you are here tonight. It's homecoming. It's nice outside, but poetry's better. So you made the right decision. Thank you for being here. I want to welcome our online audience joining us on Facebook Live. What's up? And we are so happy to be at this venue. We want to thank Paul Summers, the owner of the Golden Pony, and a Furious Flower Advisory Board member. So we are always grateful to be in this amazing venue, to be open to the community as well as the JMU. So anyway, thank you for being here. I need to say also that this reading is sponsored in part by the Amazon Literary Foundation and the Academy of American Poets. Mula Mula, thank you. Let's thank them for the money. Yes, thank you. And of course, I'm going to say to you, if you feel moved to share and donate to Furious Flower, you can do that. You can learn more about our programs. You can learn about all the cool things we're doing on our website, which is located on QR codes all around the room. I also need to thank our hostess with the mostest, Assistant Director El Renee, who is going to come introduce our featured reader tonight. Thank you again for being here.
Okay, hey y'all again. Hey, I am so delighted to introduce our featured artist, Safia Elhillo, who we are really, really just thankful and for the time and generosity of spirit that she's exuded here with us at Furious Flower and James Madison University. You should know that she is the author of The January Children, which received the Sillerman First Book Prize for African Poets and Arab American Book Award. Also, Girls That Never Die, and the novel in verse, Home Is Not a Country, which was longlisted for the National Book Award and received a Coretta Scott King Book Award author honor. By the way, y'all, we have a beautiful table with all of these books. So please stay tuned for a book signing that will follow a Q&A after the reading. Sudanese by way of Washington, D.C., Safia received 2015 Bruno International African Poetry Prize and was listed in Forbes Africa's 2018 30 Under 30. Her brilliant work appears in Poetry Magazine, Callaloo, the Academy of American Poets, Poem a Day series, among others, and in anthologies such as The Breakbeat Poets, New American Poetry in the Age of Hip Hop, and the Penguin Book of Migration Literature. Her work has been translated in several languages and also commissioned by various entities, including the Bavarian State Ballet. With Fatma Asghar, she is the co-editor of the anthology Halal, If You Hear Me. Her fellowships also include the esteemed Ruth Lilly and Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Fellowship from the Poetry Foundation, Cave Canem, and a Wallace Stegner Fellowship from Stanford University. I could go on and on about all of her illustrious, wonderful, wonderful awards. But as I was really thinking about how to situate and ground the space in her work and who she is and what she does, I kept returning to this beautiful foreword that Kwame Dawes wrote in The January Children, her first collection. Kwame, we are really delighted to have, will be here in 2024, one of our honorees at the Every Decade Furious Flower Poetry Conference. And Kwame really put this so elegantly, so I'm going to borrow his words here. Elhillo is writing with a lyric tradition that is giving shape to a new African poetics that finds a way to engage the traditional lyric while not losing sight of a poetics that could be called political, engaged, and ideologically aware. Elhillo's speaker is fully present as the voice and searching of meaning when faced with the challenges of migration and nationalism and the complications that come with broader gender issues. In this sense, her collection, and I should say her broader work, explores themes that are critical to her senses of self, of place, and of identity. Exile, home, beloveds, belonging, community, commune. Please welcome Safia Elhillo.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Elle, for that very generous and moving introduction. And thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you for everyone who read at the open mic for your beautiful work. I don't know if you saw me like heart-eyed in the front row listening to everything. I really appreciate you. I would like to read you some poems, if that's okay. Thank you. This first poem is called Vocabulary. Fact. The Arabic word hawa means wind. The Arabic word hawa means love. Test. Multiple choice. Abdul Halim said, "You left me holding wind in my hands." Or Abdul Halim said, "You left me holding love in my hands." Abdul Halim was left empty, or Abdul Halim was left full. Feiruz said, "Oh wind, take me to my country." Or Feiruz said, "Oh love, take me to my country." Feiruz is looking for a vehicle, or Feiruz is looking for fuel. Kulthum said, "Where the wind stops her ships, we stop ours." Or Kulthum said, "Where love stops her ships, we stop ours." Kulthum is stuck, or Kulthum is home. Final weeks, 1990. Hours before, the night outside is black as my grandmother's hair. It's newborn moon in Sagittarius. And in the Maryland house, my mother is 23 behind a winning hand of cards as the water darkens the length of her skirt. December now, and friends still call her Al-Arus, the bride, 11 months married and the shock of it not yet settled behind her eyes. Morning and the baby has not come. Milky winter sun in Sagittarius. I should mention there was a husband, 27. I can hardly imagine it, a boy that age. My father. I cannot picture him in the room, though his work for years to come will absorb him into countries that smell of blood. Maybe he is in the room now, not yet a specter. I sketch him in but do not know where to put him. Maybe in the corner, back rigid against the white wall. I cannot imagine them ever touching. I smudge him out, correct the still wet scene. He is outside, long-limbed in a hard plastic chair. My mother called him Jack, and this is my only proof they were in love. My mother is almost my mother now, darker color of the noontime sun. In the waiting room, I should also place my grandparents, elegant in that old over-formal way of immigrants. My grandfather's shirt never without a collar, lush neatness of the afro against his head. My grandmother could pass for a film star, hair black and feathered down her back, any suggestion of curl or coil since burnt away and set every morning in hot rollers. Her eyebrows tattooed as they have been all my life, blue-black parentheses. Both of them older than the independent state of the Sudan. My grandmother 13 years its senior. My grandfather a January child of unknown birthday, though the colonial offices recorded as 26 years before his country is born. They are placid companions. Their courtship cooled amicably into a sort of siblinghood, and I have never seen them touch, so I cannot imagine it now. He paces the cool length of the hallway. 1 hour and 39 minutes past noon. that final diluvian push, and I am outside, full head of wet hair, pomegranate creature cawing that little animal sounds. Pronounced a girl and named for a dead great aunt, the birth certificate dated and signed in ink. Back home, I would have been known by my first two names, mine and my father's, Safia Elhillo. The surname rarely used, but in the new country, the paper demands a patronym. Anglicized, the L becomes a looser L. Hello, meaning sweet, strange, unserious allonym of that first great-grandfather, and crowded together on a single line, marked first name, our names, mine and his, Safia Elhillo, little echo of that forgotten epithet, that once loved man, of Jack. And though I am not named for my mother, we match, Safa, noun form of my adjective, our shared first syllable, closest I have ever seen them, him and her, almost touching. How to say, after Aga Shahid Ali. In the divorce, I separate to two piles, books, English, love songs, Arabic. My angers, my schooling, my long repeating name, English, English, Arabic. I am someone's daughter, but I am American born. It shows in my short memory, my ahistoric glamour, my clumsy tongue when I forget the word for. In Arabic, I sleep unbroken dark hours on airplanes home and dream I've missed my connecting flight. I dream a new and fluent mouth full of gauzy swaths of Arabic. I dream my alternate selves, each with a face borrowed from photographs of the girl who became my grandmother, brows and body rounded and cursive like Arabic, but awake to the usual borderlands. I crowd shining slivers of English to my mouth. Iris, crocus, inlet, heron. How dare I love a word without knowing it in Arabic? And what even is translation? Is immigration without irony? Safia means pure. All my life it's been true, even in my clouded Arabic. Orpheus. Mold blooms on the yogurt, furring the edges in ancient colors. My body is something I have worn for other people. Even 5 years ago, I would not recognize myself today. Married, gallon bags of animal bone and corn cobs in the freezer to boil for stock. I am far away from the cities of my girlhood, cool concrete of their stairwells. The new therapist wants a list of compliments I'd give myself on behalf of those who love me, and all I can come up with is resourceful. For a time, I believed myself in love with Orpheus, which only meant I loved what I could make if I were free from what happened to my body. That man who would never touch me, kept distant and without danger by the barriers of fiction, when I believed the work would save me. I have no real use now for those Greek myths. They're dead girls, women raped by men and animals. Today the door is locked. Today nobody is outside. Muscle cramping mid-lap in the dark blue water. Now I embroider flowers in dim colors in my new country of flowers, clumsy stitches through the stencil of an orchid, remembering my younger mouth pressed to a flute, unable to release the breath. I'd liked that he was a musician, fingers long as spring onions. As a child, I ruined my sweaters, the sleeves tugged down to cover my hand before touching any doorknob or handling coins. Teenage, loitering, urgently lonely. The cotton t-shirts curled at their sliced hems. Now I am thick-fingered and practical as my mother and her mother. Smell of bleach against ceramic. Gone is Elle's humid little apartment. Violent stain on the bathroom tile. A bottle of crimson nail polish shattered long ago and leaving streaks like blood. Her dirty living room where I slept for nights on end, though my own apartment was nearby, cleaner. I can't imagine them. The poems that softened the hearts of gods. The poems that changed anything. That first cigarette I accepted. Metal of the fire escape against my bare legs, where she allowed me to tell the entire story without using the real words. The night cooling and gathered close. The way nothing ever feels truly clean in summer. And all I know about Eurydice is that she died. My only other fact about her is about him. For my friends, in reply to a question. This is after David Ignatel. I'm okay. And of course, I'm not. But I go through the motions. I wake up to the alarm's howl, even when the word in my body is no. I dress in livid colors. I blacken the hairs of each eyebrow. I bake and braise and pickle. I write and read and lose hours to the blur of the television. I sit for hours in the bath, my skin puckering. I don't know if I'll ever go home again. I don't know who I've seen for the last time. The Arabic comes back to me in streaks of paint, verb forms and vocabularies I may never again have occasion to use. My days smudge into one another, and it's not that I am afraid. It's as if I am watching it all happen below, and I am somewhere above the room, wondering if the rice is burning. I am somewhere above the room, watching my new aches, watching the news as if I am reading it in a novel. I look up the names of people I knew in childhood, learn their new and angular faces, their faraway lives. My grandfather pixelates into a smile, and I work my creaking muscles to replicate it. I do not ask if we will ever meet again. I do not ask him to read to me, or for anything that will make me long. I dull it with sugar and oil, with cooking shows, with sleep. I sleep 12 hours each night, and in my dreams, I am fleeing a war. In my dreams, I am touching the faces of my friends. We are each one of us touching, and even in the dream, we are afraid. This next little bit is a kind of an experiment. It's an early draft of something I'm calling the Khartoum Suite. Sudan has been at war for over 6 months now, and the death toll is right around 9,000 people, and the displaced are between 5 to 7 million people, which is currently the largest population of displaced people in the world. And this has been happening just over the past 6 months. It feels almost frustrating to be trying to work this out in poetry, but I need language for it somewhere because all of the news coverage essentially disappeared after the last foreigner and expat was evacuated. So these are early drafts and they're vulnerable, so I hope you will be kind. Ars Poetica. Smell of orange blossoms overwhelming from the trees, and I still each time must stop and press them to my face. Heady fact of them. Little flowers clustered in white against the fruit trees, against the new dailiness of my life. My small self pedestrian and browsing bookstores, against the backdrop of the mountains. Ancient sepia of the landscape like another planet, another country. Closer in its desert night and flora to my other and gone country. Succulence in my grandmother's gone garden, mother of pearl of the gone bookcase, gentle curve of its warped shelves. My grandfather's gone books, riddled now with bullet holes. Gone desk with its drawers of his papers. My gone self, 3 coasts from those ruins, my ruins. Gone floors where I was taught as a child to pray, where I returned as a bride to receive hours of wet black hymnal, reclined against gone cushions. My life, which has always been more here than there. Canvas tote bag, reusable water bottle. The walk after therapy to buy books and drink Earl Grey at a sidewalk table. My dailiness on the surface unchanged. I pass a tree and smell the flowers. No place in my new places for this grief. Ruined city, fallen country. My gone childhood, the ruined house, never now to be seen by the children I might have. No place here for my new never. New vocabulary for my grandmother's new statelessness. This new and ancient grief. The gone and broken airport, gone flight paths, my gone grandfather, and the grave I now may never visit. Where to put that? My every gone possibility, my stupid sadness, my mourned set of hypotheticals. Ars poetica, the crowdedness of my life with gone things, the clutter, no place for my gone places. Ars poetica, my life away from my life, the perfume of those white flowers, first everywhere, then memory, and then not even that. 1 year ago today, I am in Khartoum, my grandfather's hand soft and small in my own, his body lifting from the daybed, gentle whorls of white hair against his scalp. He does not remember me, but he is alive, peeling small sweet bananas, eyes large and tipped upward. So easy to imagine him as a child in his infinite curiosity, grown only larger since his memory began to go. He wants to know who I am, and what is my mother's name, and whose house we are in right now, admiring the soft peach color of the high walls. I drink coffee from a mug printed with a photograph of me as a child. I love you, Grandma, scrawled in crooked and colorful script. Every window is intact, the bookshelf in its place. Everyone in this story is alive. I will return once more after this and promise to come back again soon. A promise none of us will keep. Shattering of every window. At least he didn't have to see this. Khartoum. Not my city the way it belongs undeniably to others, but still one of my cities. Still, I had a life there. Piled together in the back seat of a too small car. City of girls together smoking. Quick toss of scarves to answer the doorbell. Making plans with boys, my friends. A half-finished book waiting for next time. I went to readings and saw films and listened to music in every car. I ran errands. I made plans, wove in and out, lazy with the promise of a next time. My loss is not enough to join the proper losses, the full-time and undeniable losses, but still a kind of loss, and where to put it? Penance. To practice looking. To look away. For the first 3 weeks of the war, I made myself read every dispatch, watched every video no matter the gore, the smoke, saved the photos to my phone. Hurriya Street downtown scattered and broken like the aftermath of a storm. And then these days, my looking weakened by distraction. Or maybe I have grown used to it, this splitting of my life in two, some of it here, fitting garlic into the garlic press, a friend playing the piano, buying magazines from a nearby stand, the rest of it over there, relatives newly stateless, piled into Cairo apartments. I can go hours now forgetting. And when it returns, I feel cut raw by shame. I do my penance by looking, over and over, the video with the soldiers in front of my grandparents' house. I save it to my phone next to photos of the bright salad from dinner, the screenshot of a poem I liked. Scenes from an impromptu gathering become salon, friends smoking and singing and reading, eating takeout on mismatched plates. For hours I forgot. For hours I laughed. And when I cried only because the song was beautiful. For hours I was here instead of there. And now, again, my penance. The lyrics do not translate. Arabic is all verbs for what stays still in other languages. Tasbah, to morning, what the translation to awake cannot honor, cannot contain its rhyme with tasbah, to swim, to make the night a body of water. I am here now, and I am not buoyant. I am 32 and always sick, small for my age and always translating. I cannot sleep through the night. No language has given me the rhyme between ocean and wound that I know to be true. Sometimes, when the doctors draw my blood, I feel the word at the edge of my tongue. Halim sings aghraq, aghraq. I am drowning. I am drowning. The single word for all the water in his throat does not translate. Halim sings, teach me to kill the tear in its duct. Halim sings, I have no experience in love, nor have I a boat, and I know he cannot rest, cannot swim through the night. I am looking for a voice with a wound in it, a man who could only have died by a form of drowning. Let the song take its time. Let the ocean close back up. The Cairo apartments. The cousins as barefoot children floating out of polished rooms. Together we clattered between floors in each other's jallabiyas, spectacular games of hide and seek, 3 floors and a roof to search. I can't remember if we made the songs up ourselves. Where is the bride's house? Ali Alloy prayed his prayers, boarded the boat, worked his labors. The specter of our adults in the mornings and nights, their strained and hushed voices. Our grandmothers were beautiful and suited to exile. Enormous coifs of blackened hair, silk scarves only for driving, the eyeliner tattooed, eternal livid stain on the rim of each eyelid, bare faces forgotten in childhood. Our mothers were less glamorous and always tired, always at work, wore blue jeans, cool hands that carried us to our beds at night. I loved exile and the close quarters it afforded us. I loved it enough to stay gone when all the others went home. Moved on, unlatched their shuttered houses, beat the carpets and kissed their neighbors and cried. The apartments were emptied. I returned to Cairo years later to look for our child ghosts, kicking a ball in the corridors between unfinished buildings. The time Al-Mustafa tripped and opened the skin of his palm on a fallen brick. How I wouldn't look up from my book to see what he was trying to show me. How he wrapped the bloodied hand in a dish towel and pressed down until our mother came home. I cannot find us. I more closely resemble now the young parents that corralled us, creased and shot through with sadness. There will be no children of my own to carry to their waiting beds. And the city that belonged to me has gone, was never mine. I dreamt it. I wrote it down, invented it, made all of it up. Everything but the smell of corn roasting sweetly on the street below. The carved wooden shutters, motes of dust arcing through the light. A workbook splayed before me, strained cursive in the feminine conjugation. Why I didn't look up. He didn't say he was bleeding. A shopkeeper remarks that I look very clean for a Sudanese. Ya Samar ya Samara, Ya Asmar ya Smarani. Upper Nile, silt color. Who taught you to speak Arabic like that? I don't know where the cousins have gone. I don't know what countries we've settled for. I imagine everyone back home that they might have been playing for hours without me. My brother, still with the faint stripe of a scar down his palm, remembers the stitches were done without anesthesia, the doctor telling jokes to distract him. Ode to Sudanese Americans. Basma and Rudy were first, each holding a mirror in her arms, where I could see my face as their faces. And we pierced our noses and wore gamarboba in our ears, and everyone at the party thought them hoop earrings. And in the New York years, I crowd smoky bars alongside Ladin and Shadin and Majid and Linda and Nidal, Athil and Amir and Al-Khair and Mo and Muhammad and Mo. And we are forever removing our shoes in each other's apartments, ashing cigarettes into the incense burner, making tea with the good dried mint our mothers taught us to keep in the freezer, next to the chili powder from home, making songs and dinner and jokes in our parents' accents. And I am funniest when I have 2 languages to cocktail, when I can say, remember, and everyone was there. The rented room at the middle school on Sundays, where our parents volunteered to teach us Arabic, to watch us bleed to alif, ba, da, tha, and text our American boyfriends that we were bored. And at restaurants, everyone asks if we are related, and we say yes. We do not date because we are probably cousins. We throw rent parties and project the video where Al-Balabin sing Gitar al-Shog, and I am not the only one crying. Not the only one made and remade by longing. The mutation that Arabic makes of my English, metallic noises the English makes in my Arabic. We ululate at each other's weddings. We ululate at the club. And Sarah and Hana make the mulah vegan. And in English, Safia spells her name like mine, but pronounces it like purified. Sews a patch of garmasis to the back of my denim jacket. We wash our underwear in the sink and make group texts on WhatsApp. We go home and take pictures of the pyramids. We go home and take pictures of the Nile. We move to other cities and feel doubly diasporic. And your cousin's co-worker's little sister emails me a list of biganas in Oakland, brings me crates of canned fava beans from her own parents' basement. And I say Sudanese American and mean also British Sudanese and Canadian and Australian and raised in the Gulf, Azza and Yusra and Amani and Yasmin. And it's true that my people are everywhere. The uncles driving taxis at the end of our nights, the pharmacist who fills my prescription, who is named for the mole denoting beauty adorning her left cheek, guardian spirits of my every hookah bar, of my every untagged photograph, of crop tops and short shorts and pierced cartilage and tattoos, of henna and headscarves and undercuts and shaved heads, my tapestries, embroidered with hundreds of little mirrors, glinting like sequins in the changing light. And for my last poem, to try and end on a relatively high note, because I know that was kind of a bummer. This last poem is called Ode to My Homegirls, and it's after Matthew Oldsman. Ode to my homegirls. Smelling of orange rind, of cardamom, most beautiful girls in the world. Wake up, bitch, we're getting waffles. You can keep crying, but you're going out. My marriages, my alibis, my bright and hardy stalks of protea, and all I know of love I learned at 13, dialing Basma's home phone by heart to three-way call whatever boy, so that weeks later, when the phone bill came, only Basma's familiar number beside the timestamp, clearing my name. Basma herself staying awake for hours to hang up the phone after. You who send pictures of your rashes to the group text, and long voice notes from the bathtub, your laughter echoing against the tiles. You who scatter the world's map, piling into cheap buses and budget airlines, 4 of us asleep in my dorm bed, 6 of us overflowing my studio apartment, false lashes for weeks after like commas in my every pillowcase. You plug my toilet and admit it. You text me screenshots from the Gucci fashion show, getting rich so I can get you this. And when I lived alone, and that man followed me one night home from the 6 train, up Lexington and into the hallway, tried for hours to break open my front door. You took turns from all your cities and stayed overnight with me on the phone for 3 days, snoring and murmuring in your sleep. Thank you.
Let's give it up, y'all, one more time for Safia Elhillo. A few minutes for some questions and answers from you all here. The mics are plugged in here, so when you get a chance, you can come back up here, and then I'll take questions and repeat them here for our online audience. So anyone have any questions? I can't see everyone in the back. Any questions? Okay, I'm gonna kick us off then, since y'all don't have. Do you have an international award-winning poet and y'all don't have no questions? I'm gonna ask my question. Okay, hi. I wanted to ask you. We talked a little bit about during our interview some of your writing rituals and ways you have of kind of getting started, and especially for our students here and folks who are on their writing journey. Looking at a blank page can be really paralyzing. So I wondered if you might be able to share some of your wisdoms of how you begin.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course.
So I have a lot of systems. Despite the fact that like literally my job is made up, I'm quite a practical person. So there's a checklist that I will go through whenever I sit down to write, because I was telling Elle earlier that the thing that we all call writer's block, I think for me, is just fear of writing a bad poem, or it's fear of like sitting down to write and not already like having an idea for a poem, whatever that even means. And so usually the first thing I'll do before I can scare myself off, I'll sit down, blank pages right there, and I'll either reread a book or a poem that I already love to get me re-excited about the possibilities of poetry. If that doesn't work, I keep a document on my computer called Words I Like, and it's just a long list of words I like. And I will read through that list. Sometimes something will jump out at me, If it doesn't, I will pick a couple words and assign myself the exercise of writing like a line or a stanza or something incorporating those words. If that doesn't work, I will go back to someone else's poem and borrow a line that I love and use it as like a ghost first line from my poem. So I'll use it as a kicking off point, and then once my poem is able to stand up on its own, I will delete to the first line that does not belong to me. If that doesn't work, I will go through a poem that I love, also by someone else, and go through line by line and try and identify what it's doing. So like line 1, statement about the speaker's emotional state. Line 2, observation about the world outside. Line 3, something that happened at an earlier point. Line 4, something about the speaker's physical experience, and then so on. And then I will take that list of prompts and fill it in line by line. Sometimes I have to do the whole thing. Sometimes I'll like get started and then the poem finally like wakes up and I can just take it from there. And then the etiquette with that kind of thing, of course, is then you have to be like, this poem was written after this poem by the other person, because I love just having my poems haunted by the poems that I love by other poets. So that is my checklist. Usually by that point I have written something. Yeah.
That's a good checklist, y'all. There's some gems in there I'm going to borrow, for sure. We had a question in the back of the audience that got whispered to me by our wonderful Jessica Carter, who was really entranced by kind of the incantatory way that you read and performed, and how you moved from poem to poem so seamlessly, with a slight breath, but not really a pause for applause, but just movement. And so she was really curious about your relationship with performance, with sharing your work, the intentionality of reading like a whole breadth of poems so seamlessly. Yeah. Thanks for your question, Jessica.
Thank you for your question, Jessica. The kind of simple reason for why I just read my poems all in one go without a break is because my banter ruins my poems. Historically, this is based on fact. I think I don't know how to just kind of sit in the feeling and the discomfort, so I'm always compelled to like make a joke or something, and it doesn't go well, and so I made the decision to take that out. I also, I am like a one trick or like 1.5 trick pony, so all my poems kind of go together. They're all like doing the same set of things ultimately. And so it often feels, especially when I'm putting them together to be read out loud, that my entire body of work is just one long poem that I keep adding to until I can finally get to the heart of the thing that I'm trying to say that I haven't quite gotten to yet. And so it's always a fun little experiment to me to kind of try and Tetris the poems together and see which iteration of that long poem I can make with different arrangements of those poems. And then in terms of performance, as a young person, as a teenager, I was a member of the DC Slam team. And I was talking to Ella about this earlier. This was a particular moment I don't know if it was like this in adult slam, but in youth slam, the thing to do at the time was like very like amazing, impressive, like highly choreographed poems where people move around on the stage and like doing like choreography and stuff. And I really so badly want to be able to do that. I just can't. I can either move my body or say my lines, but never at the same time. And after my poor coaches were just watching me struggle for weeks, the poet Sage Morgan Hubbard, who was one of my coaches at the time, was like, let's try something. You're just going to stand up at the mic, you're going to set your feet so you're comfortable, you're going to speak from your diaphragm and just talk. Don't do anything else. You don't have to do all that. That's not for you. You don't know how to do that. And that is the most helpful and practical performance advice I've ever gotten. And however many 15 years later, I'm still doing the exact same thing because I don't know how to do anything else.
Wonderful. We have another question from the audience from our lovely Sam, our wonderful graduate student at Furious Flower, who was asking about if you remember the first poet that you read that just like grabbed you instantly, and maybe what that moment was or who that poet was, and kind of sharing a little bit more about what got you.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. So I have two answers to this question. The first answer, the real answer, is that a lot of my like early encounters with poetry, my first encounters with poetry were at open mics in DC at Busboys and Poets back when there was just one location, and the open mic was on Tuesday evenings. And the thing that I learned very quickly is that this was also kind of like really the internet the way we have it today. And so there would be this moment, and I still remember that feeling in my body. There'd be this moment where you'd be watching someone read a poem, and you would realize that you absolutely loved the poem and that you probably were never going to hear it again. And so you really had to like lock in and pay attention and remember the feeling. And those were the poets who were the first poets that I was in awe of, and the first poets that I admired and wanted to be like. People who I never saw again, whose poems I never heard ever again. And that like, you know, shaped the trajectory of my entire life. And then once I kind of made the decision that I wanted to be a poet, I remember in very early days of YouTube watching the poet Suhair Hamad read the poem Daddy's Song on Deaf Poetry Jam, R.I.P. And really loved that poem. But the thing that really like, I don't know, like jolted me online for what felt like the first time is there's one word that she says at the very end of the poem. It's like, it must be the last line or something of the poem, where she says, "That's my song too, Balba, and one day I'm gonna read it for you in a poem, or one day I'm gonna sing it for you in a poem." And I was like, you can speak Arabic in a poem and then switch back, you know, because so much of, we were talking about this earlier in our interview, but my like, very unspecial diasporic experience is that I grew up speaking Arabic in the house and like in Sudanese diaspora spaces, and then English everywhere else. And so at first, this like new poetry community I wanted to be a part of qualified as everywhere else. But the way that I speak with the people that I am most comfortable with tends to be a hybrid, like mutant version of the two languages spliced together. And here was this space where I wanted intimacy so badly and I wanted belonging so badly, but I wasn't using my language of intimacy and of belonging. And so just that one moment in that one poem all those years ago gave me permission to like write how I speak, I guess. And again, fundamentally altered my life.
Yes, what's your question? So it's a follow-up question to the remark that you made about balancing the two languages. Mm-hmm. How do you balance them? What is your thought process when you balance Arabic and English in your poetry?
I'm just going to repeat the question so our online audience can hear you. So the question was about how do you balance Arabic and English? What's your thought process behind that, balancing that?
Yeah, it helps to remove thought as much as possible, because what I'm hoping to do is to invite into the poem the way that language naturally occurs in my head. And so ideally, I'm writing the word down in the language that it occurred to me in, and just trying to keep that channel as clear and like as uncurated as possible. It ends up being mostly in English because also the entirety of my formal education, the bulk of my literacy are in English. But even in the Anglophone parts of the poem, I wanted to feel haunted by the presence of another language. The Moroccan theorist Abdel Fattah Kelito has a book whose title translates to "I speak all languages but in Arabic." And so I think that's what I'm trying to do as much as I can.
Thank you.
Beautiful question. Any other follow-up questions? Yes, what's your question?
You mentioned you have the document Words You Like. Love that. What are some of those words?
Okay, so the question is, Words You Like document. What are words that are on that document?
Okay, what are some words I like? Lacuna, Sejura, milk, apple, oyster, isotope, simulacra, blue as a verb, that thing is pages and pages long, but these are the ones that tend to be ones that I haven't really figured out how to use in a poem, and so they're on my mind always. I'm like, how can I get simulacra into a poem?
Title. Any other questions? Yes.
I know we have a lot of folks who would like to be published in the audience, and so I'm curious about what that experience of having your books go out into the world has been like, and if there's anything you want to share about that to our audience.
So we have a question about publication. What has your publishing experience been like? And any thoughts that you could share about that to our aspiring published writers here?
Yeah. So the first helpful piece of publishing advice I was ever given was by my friend Nate Marshall, who I know also came and read for you all a few years ago on this very stage. And I remember being, I think it was both of our first year at Kavekana, and everyone else just really seemed to know what they're doing. And I was like, did I miss a meeting or something? How does everyone just know? And so I was like, Nate, how do I publish poems? And he was like, okay, here's what you're gonna do. The way to find venues to publish your work or to submit your work for publication is usually most contemporary poets, either on their websites or in like the acknowledgement section of their books, will be like, versions of these poems have appeared in the following publications. And if it's a poet whose work you feel like is in conversation with your own in some way, or a poet whose readers you feel might be sympathetic to your own work in that way, he was like, you make a list of those places and you send them your work. It's also very helpful to keep some sort of track of what you're sending where. I personally am a spreadsheet girl, but I figured out how to do that. And so that is like most of the way that I learned about even the world of publishing, because again, the first like, I don't know, 5 to 7 years of my poetry life was spent exclusively in performance spaces and spoken word and slam spaces. And, people would have chapbooks for sale, but they would often be self-published or published by kind of some smaller presses that were there to serve that specific audience and community. And so I don't think I had read a literary magazine until I was like in my early 20s. And so this was a great crash course to be like, okay, the poets I like are in these journals and magazines. I'm gonna read these magazines and submit to them. And then once there was kind of a body of my work out there, it made it so that people who have a say over things like books could see the work. And then, so my first book was published because I submitted it to a First Book Prize for African Poets. And the manuscript that I submitted had been my MFA thesis, but it was like 3 pages too short for the page count minimum for the prize. So I had to go through and like break up poems into like sections that aren't really in sections. But that worked out. Before that, so the Silverman is run in part by the African Poetry Book Fund, which is based out of the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. And I had received an email from our dear Kwame Dawes a couple years prior to that being like, we invite you to submit a manuscript for consideration for the New Generation African Poets chapbook box set. And I was like, amazing. And they were like, if you choose to accept, we need the manuscript in 1 week. And I was like, this is a whole manuscript in 1 week? This is the first time I'm ever hearing from you all. But luckily I was kind of in the early days of starting to think about my thesis. And so even if I didn't have a manuscript together, I had some thoughts towards a manuscript and spent what might have been the most stressful 10 days of my life being like, I can't embarrass myself in front of Kwame Dawes, gotta get this 10-day manuscript together. So I sent that out. I did not hear back for a very long time. It was devastating. And then got the acceptance email. And so that kind of, I don't know, I feel like funneled me into the pipeline of people who were publishing books, even though it was not really a world that I knew anything about prior to that. And yeah, since then, it's honestly is like the great shock and horror of my life that there are this many books, because I think of myself as being kind of a slow writer. But because of just the way the publishing timeline works, books that are like years apart in the making end up coming out like back to back, which is very strange. Especially because the part that I love is the writing part, and that part feels like it's over in an instant. And then the publishing part, which is, it's in the business, feels like work, feels like it is the more prominent aspect in my life. And so that's also, it's great to publish, it's exciting to publish, and also nothing feels as good as the writing. And so like you really got to take your time with the writing, because once it's done, you'll miss it so much when you're just answering emails for all eternity.
All right, y'all, let's give it up one more time. Okay, just a little housekeeping business for you all. You have seen on your chairs, hopefully, this lovely QR code that says check in for the open mic and poetry reading. You can scan this with your phone and check in for our campus group so we can let people know the impact that our programming has. So we would very much appreciate you all doing that. You got your phones out already. You're on the gram. Just take a little quick pic for us. And the same with this second piece of paper. It is our survey. We, as you heard from our executive director, apply for grant funding to try to bring these amazing international artists here to Harrisonburg. And so we need to give funders feedback to do that. So we would really greatly appreciate the survey. It'll take 2 minutes. If while you have your phone out here checking in, that you can also just scan this really quickly, give us some feedback. Everyone says, oh, I'll do it when I leave, I'm tired. You won't do it when you leave, we know that. So please, really quickly right now, whip out your phones and do that for us so that we have it. Those who are here for passport events, I am the holder of the stamp, so come see me to the side of the stage so I can honor your attendance here with us. And then lastly, I will say you can continue the conversation with Safia here at the side. We have all 3 of her current books out for sale, and she'll be willing to sign them. We just ask that you move a little expeditiously because we do have another event in this space that starts in about 25-ish minutes. So please, if you'd like, cash, card, all those things accepted, move over to the side and we will get you going on. Thank you so much for coming out and supporting Furious Flower and our artists. And we hope to see you again at our next event, which will take place November 9th with our visiting artist, Tawanda Mulalu. So stay connected with us so you can get more information about that event. Otherwise, y'all have a beautiful night. Thank you.